I'm Lieutenant Guy Borff of the Indiana State Police Motor Carrier Division. In the next few minutes, through the technology of video, Indiana would like to share with you its experience that we've had with a concept using an optical scanner to read motor carrier forms. The problem that Indiana had in 1986 was a tremendous growth in the number of inspections that we're doing for the Motor Carrier Safety Assistance Program. To be able to process a number of forms correctly and to be able to handle the volume of projected growth, Indiana looked into a new technology using optical scanners. The machine is an optical form reader which will read printing and automatically input the data into the computer for us. We developed this concept in 1987 and became operational July 1st, 1988. As you can see on the graph, we plotted the MIXAP inspection reports for 1985 through and including 1989. These are approximations. In 1985, we did approximately 5,000 inspection forms for the year. In 1986, we had jumped to 13,000. Having more than doubled our number of inspection forms, we found we were about 3 months behind in data entry and were falling behind further. At this time, we employed 2 data entry operators on a full-time basis through the manpower services. These girls would come into the state police facility and input our data forms by hand. These 2 input girls would input the forms twice, usually on different days, and then the results would be compared for an error check. This was a rather time-consuming method. We got onto the technology of the data reader, and we developed the concept to use the data reader to input our forms directly into a computer system and to get onto a micro system rather than be tied into the mainframe. Looking back at the graph, you can see from 86 to 87 we jumped up to 36,000 forms, and at that time this project was under development. We went online July 1st, 1987 and completed the rest of that year using the data reader technology. Later in the video I will explain our experience we had with the data reader, but to finish out the graph, in 1988 we processed 42,000 forms, and at no time were we more than 2 months behind in data entry. In 1989 we finished out the year with over 46,000 forms, and as I currently speak to you, we are caught up on a same day in, same day out processing. As you can see on the screen now, the data entry for a good operator would be about 10,000 keystrokes per hour. The AEG forms reader that we currently use is capable of 100,000 keystrokes per hour. Realistically, the machine replaces 4 to 5 data input girls. It also eliminates the double entry process. The forms are entered one time, and the items that the machine cannot read are flagged in the field, and the operator simply corrects those characters that the forms reader cannot read. The forms reader is an adaptive statistical character generator, and it reads characters in handwriting, which must be printing, and this is processed. The reader can learn to identify certain fields as critical. You can further set the machine so that certain characters are read easier than other characters, and part of your success would be in the layout of the form as far as getting a high percentage of characters read. Presently we experience about a 75% or greater character recognition. This means that 75% of the forms will be processed and only 25% will have to be corrected or entered by hand. The system itself scans the form and inputs the data into files in the computer in an ASCII format. Later these files are transferred to tape, and that tape is then loaded into the IBM 386 computer. The 386 then manipulates the data and puts the proper fields in the proper order for the safety net quarterly reports and for the uploads to Washington, D.C. The basic rules that will guarantee success of the program are in both your layout and design of your form and in teaching your people to print. The neater and cleaner they print the information on the form, the higher success ratio that the machine can read the printing and transfer it to the computer. A pencil or a pen that leaves a dark even mark is very important. Our experience has shown that a number 2 lead pencil works the best. Mechanical pencils do not work well. Any black ballpoint ink pen works fine. If you use a magic marker type pen or a marker pen, we have had problems with that. You absolutely cannot use whiteout with this machine. The whiteout will flake as the form is pulled through the machine, and the flaking will get onto the mirrors and to the lighting, and it will gum up the machine and also cause slippage on the belts and rollers. Each of the characters must be evenly spaced and the same size. To accomplish that, you'll see on our form, as shown on the screen, the form, we have actually printed boxes. Each letter should be placed in a box. The boxes will be the proper number for that field. In other words, our motor fuel tax number is an 8-digit number, and there will be 8 boxes in that field. That also helps the people in the enforcement division to be able to recognize how many characters we are looking for. You must avoid any characters touching each other, as this makes it extremely difficult for the reader to recognize, and you should keep the characters the same shape. We actually had an instructor come in from the AEG company and give a class on block printing for our people with a pilot project of approximately 40 people before this form was released to the division. These people were taught to print in a specific format, and at that time their forms were run through a machine. They could actually look at the screen and see which characters the form was having trouble reading with their individual writing. Very quickly, I'll go through the form for you. You'll notice in the upper left-hand corner we have the control number printed on the form. This is read with 100% accuracy. These characters are pre-printed, and the reader will have no difficulty at all distinguishing these characters. The form itself is printed in a orangish red ink. This is because there are filters in the machine that filter out the orange ink, and this machine has a tendency to look at the form and not see the printing that's on your form except for that printing that has been put on there with a pencil or black ink. In other words, once the red is filtered out, this machine will see nothing but what has been printed on the form. The next block is the inspection date, and you'll notice we put the MM, DD, and YY for month, date, and year. The inspector simply writes over top of those orange characters, since the orange characters will not show. Military time, hours and minutes are indicated. The next field would be the inspection county, and that would be a number from 1 to 99. Now, in the layout of the form, it is extremely important, if you can, to separate your alpha characters from your numeric characters. With a numeric field, you only have 10 choices, 0 through 9. The machine can make better guesses on what the characters are if it doesn't have to guess at letters also. Any boxes like the next boxes you see for location, we have S, T, and H. S is scales, T is terminal, and H is highway. Those boxes simply require a check mark. The form has no difficulty discerning if there was a mark placed in that field, and that way it doesn't have to read the letters S, T, or H. So that field is read rather quickly. The highway location is written in, and the violation attachments, yes or no, is marked. We have 4 levels of inspection shown on the form. They simply X out the level of inspection they were conducting. If there's a project number assigned, it will go in this box. If there is an incident or accident number assigned, it will go in this box. The next field is for the motor carrier name. We've provided the whole entire line is set aside for that motor carrier name, and it will pick up anything that's put in those boxes. Then we have his street address, we have his city, state, and zip code. If he's inter or intra-state, we check the boxes. We want to know what state he was coming from and going to. We want to know what his ICC number is. The IURC decal would be the Indiana Utility Regulatory Commission, and that is an Indiana assigned number, and that would be one of the state fields that we've specified. Also on the fuel tax number, the 8-digit numbers I explained earlier will go in these boxes. On his commodity, if it's a hazardous material, we put the UN or NA and the 4-digit commodity number, and then specifically in the next box we print out the commodity that he was hauling. The state's census number goes in the last box on this line. On the following line we have the pounds or gallons of material. If we break a cargo seal, we have a place for the ISP seal replacement number, and also have a spot for the federal census or the DOT number. We then pick up the vehicle owner and his address. We pick up the shipper and the shipping paper identifications. We then pick up the driver's name, the driver's license number, his date of birth, and the state that his license was issued from. As we drop down to the 4 boxes that are numbered, this would be the vehicle numbers, being tractor, trailer, any dollies, whatever. We pick up the type of that vehicle, the year of that vehicle, the make and company number, what state his license out of, and his license plate number for that state. Then we pick up the hazardous material codes. On the present federal form, those are letters. We change these to numbers because the machine will read numbers better than letters, and this makes this field very easily read. The computer then has a software program that will convert these numbers back to the federal letters. There's a place for placards, yes or no, required quantity, yes or no, and hazardous waste, yes or no. If he's displaying a CVSA decal, we pick up the state that was issued from and the decal number, and if we issue an Indiana decal, the Indiana is already put in the boxes. It requires nothing further on the inspector's part other than to record the number. If he has a spec cargo tank, we pick up the MC number, and if he has a hazardous materials exemption number, that goes in these 4 boxes. In the remarks section, you'll notice there are 3 lines, and only the first line has boxes. That indicates to the inspector that anything put in the boxes in the first line, which is about 38 boxes, it will be picked up and read by the machine. Anything on lines 2 and 3 will not be read by the machine, and they can write whatever information in there that they deem appropriate for court notes or for future reference. Down at the bottom, the inspector signs the form. The scanner will not scan the signature. We only scan these 4 boxes showing the inspector PE number, as everyone on our department is identified by a 4-digit PE number. There's a place for the military time that the inspection was completed, and a place in the lower left-hand corner for an error checking PE number. This would be the supervisor of this inspector who looks at this form before it's sent to our office, and he or she would place their 4-digit PE number in that lower left-hand box, so that if we did have a problem, we know what supervisors to go to correct the problems. At the bottom right is a place for the driver to sign. You will notice that both signature areas are well separated from any of the boxes that must be filled in. This will prevent any signature from flowing over into a box and overwriting on top of a character that the machine needs to read. Page 2 of our form is the violation sheet. In the top left-hand corner, the inspector would transfer over the control number from page 1 and any accident or incident number from page 1. He would then proceed to number his violations on the far left column, putting the safety net federal violations in the middle 2 columns, and the decimal point is placed in these columns already on the form and already in the software. So it looks for the 3-digit prefix and then the digits after the decimal point. The following column is the unit number, and the last column is the out-of-service column. The out-of-service column will simply be X's, the unit number will be 1, 2, 3, or 4 corresponding to page 1, and D for driver. At the bottom of the second form are signature blocks and places for the out-of-service information. The next graphic will show the sequence for the data reader processing. First of all, you have your truck inspection and the filling out of the form. Second step is that this form is then submitted to that person's supervisor for error checking and anything that the supervisor might notice that he wants to pick up for his reports as to what locations his people are working, what kind of out-of-service violations they're finding, anything that he wants to use supervisorly. Number 3 would be that the form is then mailed to the motor carrier office. The division office will then stack the forms up, and in step 4 the forms are separated. That is, page 1s are separated from page 2s. The software in the machine will only read page 1s in a stack, and then it has to be reset to read the page 2s. After the tape is generated, the IBM 386 will integrate the 2 forms back into a complete inspection. Step 5 is that the forms are then run through the reader in stacks of 100. Step 6 is that the terminal operator will then go through and correct errors. At this time we'll show you these errors being corrected, and as you can see, the machine will place question marks in those fields for those characters it cannot read. In a lot of cases it can read all but one letter in a field. So the operator is only inserting a single character to make that field then 100% recognizable. This level of percentage can be set by the software depending upon the criticality of the field. If it's a non-critical field, you can set it to read like 50% accurate, and at that point it would make a guess. If it is a very critical field, you'll have your accuracy up in the 90s, and that is where our errors get kicked back, are in those fields that we must read, that the reader simply cannot make a good guess. It will then kick that out as an error to be corrected. At the end of a day, the operator will then generate a tape with that daily's activity on it. Step 8, that data is then integrated into the 386 system. Later on in step 9, that data is all integrated to fit the proper federal format, and any reports that need to be generated or data that needs uploaded to Washington, D.C. can then take place. In the last step of our process, step 10, the original report, the one that was mailed in, is then separated by state where that truck is based, and those are mailed to the officer in charge of the MIXAP program in that state for audit purposes. I might mention that this form is a 3-part form. The top form is a heavy bond paper, and that is the form that comes into our office. The second and third forms are carbonless forms, and the second copy goes to the driver at the time of inspection. The third copy is retained by the officer for court purposes and for his personal information. In the remaining few minutes that's left, I would like to summarize the project for you. I would also like to point out some expected resistance and problems that you might have with such a project. I would like to also expound on the benefits and to relate Indiana's experience that we've had on this project. As far as summarizing the project, the key punching is entirely bypassed with this system except for your error corrections. The data entry is done by the computer, and as we stated earlier, the ASCII file is generated. That ASCII file can then be manipulated to do anything with it that you so desire. This speeds up the processing by eliminating a lot of the entry that is normally done by data people, and this can also be structured and organized to work well as a PC standalone project. This eliminates being tied into a mainframe and gives you the freedom from being tied into a mainframe. Some of the resistance that you can expect, first of all, is going to be the money for the hardware and the software. This is an expensive item, and it does require a lot of support equipment. The new form is going to take adjustments both from the field people and from the data entry people, and you will meet with some resistance when this first becomes a reality in your state. The quality of printing must be improved upon as Indiana's experiences bore out. The most frequently misread letters were E, O, R, T, I, G, and A. These were followed by the numerals 1, 2, and 5. If a lot of time is spent on those characters, we found that our experience with the printer increased drastically. Another resistance you're going to have is a change from an old system to a new system. This is the normal resistance you'd have with any new project. One of the problems you're going to encounter is that you must have clear instructions, both for the person filling out the form and for the people processing the form. You will be required to have some data support, some people that can track down your software problems and your hardware problems when they occur. Normally this is not done by our data entry people. However, they have picked up on some of the easy problems to fix and are getting quite good at that. Some of the benefits of this system is that the form can be put in a logical order versus the order of the form that you may be using now. By that I mean you can, with truck inspections, put the form in the order that would be logical to inspect a truck, starting with the driver, company information, fuel tax name, and so forth. It doesn't matter what order the material is on the form. When the scanner scans it and places these in the ASCII files, they can then be manipulated, and that order can then be moved around in any order that you desire for the purposes of uploading to Washington, D.C., or for inputting into something you may already have. This form turns out to be quicker after the people are trained and get used to it. It does involve less data operator entry handling. The law enforcement administrator can see several advantages from a system such as this. He has quicker access to data, more on a real-time basis than what he may have had in the past. The computer can do searches for specific ad hoc requests without using a programmer. The software usually is tied into a database. In our situation, we're using our base with a clout program, and we can simply talk to the computer and make our requests at the keyboard. We do not have to have a programmer come out and write a program to get certain information out of the database. The technology also aids the law enforcement administrator in managing his people and managing the hours and locations that they work. And it also is a system that can be custom fit for your specific department or divisional needs. To summarize Indiana's experience, we have 206 people in the Motor Carrier Division of the Indiana State Police that are trained in the use of this form, and an additional 20 people that are district personnel out in the field who also help us on a part-time basis. We expect to break 50,000 forms sometime during the next year. The form layout is critical to the success of this project, and you should spend a lot of time on laying out and designing your form and using every conceivable means of structuring the form to help your data entry be read more easily and more accurately. Your training of personnel is critical. We found that by running a field test first with 40 people, we got past the initial resistance. Once we had these people trained and using the form, when we went full bore with the whole state of Indiana, the 40 people that were in the test project had no problems whatsoever adapting and were helpful in teaching the other people how to fill out this stuff. This project requires support from our data personnel from the technical angle, which is essential. This person must be able to troubleshoot, spot hardware and software problems, and be able to fix things that go wrong. However, this has not, in our experience, been a full-time position, and we've been able to get by using a person from our data management division part-time. The initial resistance, as I stated earlier, has turned to enthusiasm. The people find now that the new form is easier to fill out, quicker to fill out, follows a more logical order, and by indicating the number of boxes for a field, they know about what type of information and how much information we're looking for in that line or that field. The form is quickly filled out. In the field, it cannot be smudged, stapled. You cannot use whiteout. There are some things that you do have to watch for, and that again is a training process. Printing continues to be our #1 problem. As we stated earlier, we have a probably 75% or greater accuracy of characters read at this point in the project, and we're simply trying to improve on that now. The machine downtime has been negligible. The machine itself has only broken down 2 times in a year. Since it was under warranty, once we notified the company, they sent out a replacement machine to use until our reader was returned to us. The last thing, with Indiana's experience, we found that you can control a lot of your accuracy and your information by controlling your substitution rates and marking your critical fields in such a manner that the machine only has a few choices to make. By substitutions, you can set the criticality of a field so that the information in that field, if it's not real important, can be set at a low accuracy rate, and if it is highly important or critical to your project, it can be set at a rate that's high enough to require almost a data entry in that field. In closing, I would just like to say that Indiana has been extremely well satisfied with this project. This was a good investment. We bought into this technology at a good time. Operationally, this is feasible. It is a very user-friendly system, and the results have far surpassed the expectations that we had as we were developing the project. Now we're simply trying to make our results even better.